If you watch the video I did on the trolling motor battery cable, the cutoff switch I used, I added a cable in there, and what I did is I bought one on Amazon, and it was obviously red, not black. But in there, I was thinking originally I was going to make a cable for you and show you how to do that, but we're going to do that in this situation. And the reason I want to do a separate one is that sometimes you're having to replace batteries like this ionic battery here, which has lugs on it that are 3/8 in size, all consistently in size. It may be replacing an AGM battery, which has 3/8 on one lug and 5/16 on the other lug. Or you may have go to it like my Battleborn, which uses a 5/16 on both lugs. Okay, so you might have to change an end, or sometimes you'll get cables that are corroded or messed up, or you have exposed wires and you just want to redo them and clean them up a little bit. So that's the whole point of this. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take and show you a little bit about, I point down to this stuff down below here, but I'm going to show you how to make this cable, okay, what type of connectors to use on it, and how to figure out what size lugs you need, this post size, okay? So if we start off at the beginning here, I don't know if you can see it, but this ionic battery on the top has screw terminals. It may not even be in frame here. Let's see. Let me rotate the camera a little bit. There you go. Okay. So this ionic battery takes a 3/8 lug. Okay. So that fits pretty well there. Now, if you notice that when I did that other video, this cutoff switch here, right, takes the same size lug. So if I'm going to make a battery cable that goes from this switch to this ionic battery, I use 3/8 on both ends, okay? But if I'm going to go to, say, my Battleborn, I need a 3/8 on one end and a 5/16, which is this size here, on the other end. But if I'm going to go, say, from this cutoff switch, okay, to my breaker, let's put that back there. If you go to the breaker takes a 1/4 inch, okay? You can see that, okay? So we're going to take and make a cable for that it says we're going to go from 1/4 inch, okay, which is what this cable is. This is 1/4 inch to, I'm sorry, this is 5/16. We're going to go from a 1/4 inch to a 3/8 of going directly to the switch itself, okay? Fortunately, most of the battery cables in your boat are already set up okay to do certain things, but again, if you're adding switches, replacing batteries, replacing battery types, the last thing you want to do is put a large lug on there and it wobbles in, so when you tighten everything down, you don't have a lot of good electrical contact, okay? So let's get started. Let's talk about our lugs we're using, okay? There are 3 different types that I found so far. I'm sure there's a lot of other lugs, and this is not including the connector types that I use, which are the marine grade stuff from Ancor. But the battery lugs tend to be either what I call it's a closed end here. So hopefully you can see that. See, it's completely closed on one end, it's not open. And it's also flared on one end to help you get the wire in it. This is the type that I prefer. This is also tinned, okay? They make this same one without being tin, which is in a copper. Hopefully you can see the color on that. You can see it copper colored, okay? That we don't want to use because that will it corrodes a lot quicker than the tin one, okay? The other type, and the type I don't like using, but they call it like a keyhole. And if you look at the very end of that, you can see there's an opening there. So when you put your wires in, you can actually look in and see, oh, did they get a good crimp? In our situation, we really don't want to use that. I want to be able to have a nice watertight type connection so I don't get anything in here. So when I do the crimp, I'm going to crimp it and I'm going to put a piece of heat shrink on here. So now I have everything sealed up. We don't have anything exposed. So I prefer not to use these. I did buy a set, but the kit, I'll put a link to it in the description here. Hold on. Let me get this computer. Okay. So this is the kit that I used quite a bit, and what I do is that as I start using that sections of this kit, I'll refill it, okay? So it does not come with the heat shrink, okay? and I'll talk about heat shrink in a bit when I talk about all the components we're using, but in this kit it goes anywhere from like a number 10 wire, which is what you use on your fuse blocks, all the way up to the 3/8. There's the 3/8 in. Actually, that's the next size up. This is in a much larger wire size. Okay, but pretty much this kit here covers the 8, 6, and 4 gauge, which is common stuff. Pretty much the common is our 8 gauge are run for the power wires for your electronics. 6 gauge is usually run for the trolling motor. Sometimes you'll have a 4 gauge in there, so it's nice to have a set of 4s. And there's also some 2s in here. The 2s are, again, much bigger cable. We don't really normally use that on a boat, but just in case you do, it's good to have a couple of those. But again, they only come in generally in the larger lugs. So this is the set, a nice easy set. The nice thing is you can buy that one set, you can do a lot of cables with it, and you just keep it around because you never know when you need to replace it here. Okay, so let me clean this mess up, and we'll get going. I'll start making a cable for you. All right, let's look at the parts we need. This is very simple. Again, we're just going to make this simple cable. We're going to make it in a power version. So instead of using black wire, we're going to use red wire. Okay, so first thing we need is some wire, obviously. This is 6 gauge, 6 AWG marine tinned wire. Okay, this is from Anchor. Now, the problem is that the minimum you're going to be able to buy is like a 10-foot spool of this. So if you've got, say, something like a West Marine nearby, you can go down and maybe buy it by the foot. I would buy probably an extra foot. This cable, the cable I showed you, is about 2 feet long. So we're going to make one about the 2 foot long. But so if I were buying the cable, I'd buy 3 feet of it, just in case you have to cut off connectors, redo them. All right. So this is just a 20-foot spool. I'll put a link to the to this in the description. Okay. So I'm going to use that, the wire, the most important piece. Then the next I'm going to use are these 2 lugs. Okay. One lug is a 5/16, and that lug is going to go to my battery. Okay. That's, again, I have Battleborns. They use a 5/16 inch bolt to connect to the battery. Okay. So that's one piece. The other end of that cable is going to a battery switch that uses a 3/8. Okay. So I need these 2. So just those 2 lugs, this, and then I need some heat shrink. And in this case, I'm just going to use the red. Now, obviously, you're not going to buy, 20 feet like I did, 10 feet of each. But if you get a kit that has these lugs in it, look and see if it has the heat shrink in it. If it has heat shrink with adhesive, then that's what you want. You basically want a minimum of a 3-to-1 shrink rate and adhesive lined heat shrink, and that'll give you the right type of heat shrink for it. Okay, so that's the parts. I mean, they're real simple. Again, we're just making a power cable. We may or though in some cases you may just simply be cutting the existing connector off the end and then putting a new one on, basically either to change your battery type or change just basically because it's corroded. Just cut it off and go from there. Okay, so we'll get I'll show you the tools that I'm going to be using, but just while you're looking at, if you haven't subscribed, I really appreciate you subscribing to the channel. I'm really trying to get this channel really going well. I've got a lot of great interactions from you guys. I really truly appreciate it. So let's look at the tools here. Okay, let me get this going, and then we will. So the tools. Let me push these parts over. Tools are fairly simple. We're going to use. We're going to use this lug crimper that I showed you in the tools video. Okay, I've got to set it up for my 6 gauge. And then I'm going to use this wire cutter and to trim the ends off and things like that. So I'm going to use these 2 tools from this kit. So this kit contains both, which is kind of handy. Okay, so that's where we're going to start. I'm also going to have a wire stripper, which is this stripper here. Okay, I don't know if you can see that pretty well. Okay, this stripper, actually it turns out this biggest opening in the stripper here is made for, it actually works really well for the 6 gauge. I tried the next size down, it cut too many strands. Okay. It also has a little stripper on the end there. We're going to try the stripper. I've had limited success with that, but what I generally do is I just take a standard knife, a utility knife, and cut the rest of the insulation off. This insulation is tough, so it takes a little bit to take it off. So those are the basic tools you need. I'm going to use a set of micrometers, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure that for you just to show you how much wire you have to have inside of this connector here. Where'd it go? Oh, there we go. Okay. Again, what you want to do is have the wire go all the way to the end there, but not stick out the back. So we'll use the micrometer to get our length on that. Okay. So here's the heat shrink gun I'm going to use. Okay. So we're going to heat shrink the heat shrink on the end of these wire lugs. Okay. And that'll take care of that. It's just basically just have to heat up 2 ends. It's pretty quick. And the last thing I'm going to do finally is I want to check everything continuity wise. But what I'm going to do is as I make this cable, I'm going to check one end and then I'll check it complete. Okay, I just want to make sure before I get too far into, say, cutting the wire lengths, things like that, or getting too far into basically putting both connectors on, having a bad connector, you're not knowing which end. So that's what this is going to be used for. All right. So let's go ahead and we will start the assembly process. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this wire. I want to trim the end off. Okay. The reason is that I don't know the condition of these pieces of wire, so let me just cut it off with the cutters here. Oh, sorry. My hand, I'm going to be a little goofy on these connections because right now both of my hands, I just had a little operation on them. Probably can't see it in the video very well, but I just had the trigger fingers done. So now the cable is ready. What I want to do next is I'll take my micrometer here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and run this down inside of here. Okay. The easiest way is to push it down in there. I want to make sure that this is coming in on this top section here. So what I'm reading is 13 millimeters, or basically half an inch. See the half-inch mark there. Okay. So that's what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do now is on my cable itself, I'm going to take my magic marker or my Sharpie, good old Sharpie handy. I'm going to mark it at a half an inch, roughly. Okay. So I can use the micrometer with it being set up to what I need for depth-wise at 54. So I'll just come over here. I know we're using a micrometer. We're going to cut it with an axe. So all I'm going to do is just mark this right here. Okay. So what I know is that on that cable, where I just marked it, I'm going to cut on the uphill side of that wire. Okay, now I didn't cut that wire flush, so that's another reason I'm going to cut on the uphill of that. All right. So now I'm going to use these wire strippers. Okay, I'm going to use the biggest opening here. So I'm going to lay this onto the blade right at it's going to be hard to see that. See where it's laying there. So I'm going to just put it on that mark. And there we go. Okay. Then you just simply run it around. That's, yeah. I'm left-handed, so I'm going to run it around this way. Okay. So just do a couple revolutions. Now what you'll do is you'll see that the wire got separated pretty good. And what I do is, again, something I try to do is I fold this back a little bit. I see if I cut any strands. And because I use the widest opening in this, it seems to be just the right size. Now, sometimes I will also use a small screwdriver, like this one. You can get the screwdriver in there and pry it up. Okay, again, like I said, this insulation is a pain. So we know we got it good, clean. We got them almost all of our conductors. Actually, it looks like apparently we got them all. So now let's just do a test fit. So if we come on the outside of this, we can say, okay, that's going to be pretty close. So what I do is I put it in here now. Again, the nice thing about these connectors, these lugs, they're flared. so you don't really have to spin the wire like I normally do. And you can see now it fits in there pretty good. So we put this jacket up here. You can see we're going in right at that bend. Okay. So again, roughly 1/2 inch is what you need to strip back on these lugs. All right. So the next thing is I've got this adjusted for 6 gauge wire. It's supposedly it's a 16 millimeter square, 16 millimeter squared setting. We'll see if that's right. Sometimes I find these settings are a little bit off and I have to go down a size to get a good crimp. So let's do one of the crimps now. Again, because my wrists are messed up or my hands are messed up, this is gonna be a little difficult for me. So I'm gonna do it a little bit funky. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to put it on my body here. Okay, you hear that click? Those are the leads, the settings clicking in. Now, as you start, this might be a little difficult to see. As you start this cable in here, okay, make sure you push it all the way in. Now you see, as soon as I did that, I pushed the wire up again. So I'm going to go back. I'm just going to spin it, make a good connection. Again, you put it in there, make sure everything's good. All right, so we're in there. We're good. So I'm going to start crimping it. Okay. So I'm using it against my body. Normally you use both hands, but like I say, my hands are messed up right now. And I can tell you right now, while it's still sitting there, I'm going to go down 1 crimp size. Okay, it says you're supposed to use the number 16. I'm going to go down to the number 10 setting. Okay, because this setting created a loose connector. You can see it actually pushed it out of the connector. You can see it goes in and out. You do not want that. Okay, so if you get that, redo it, go down a size. Okay, so let's flip down to the next size. All right, so we're gonna get the old cable, our template cable. Okay, so we're gonna start off with, we may as well use the same end. So this end here, come down, go down, and I'm gonna go to the end of this cable here, and that's where I'm gonna cut it off. All right. Man. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. My hands are just totally messed up. So, all right. So now we got our basic length on the cable we're making. So let's go back, strip this end. I'll strip this end here, and then I'll put the connector on it, and then I'll show you how to do the heat shrink. And then, but before I do that, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take and do a test on this cable. Okay. So we're gonna get the meter out. It's gonna turn it on. We're gonna turn on the ohm scale. Ohm out your meter. Okay. Hear it beeping. Okay. So with that beep, okay. Let's see if we can get that so you can see it on the camera. Okay. Right now it's an open circuit. What I'm gonna do is I'm just connect it to one end of the cable. I'm gonna put it on the wire here. Okay. And then on the other end of the lug, I'm just gonna touch it. And you can see we got a good cable here. Okay. All right. So we're good. So we know that this connection is good, even though it's not perfect like I like it. Again, I don't like that gap whatsoever. So, all right. So put the meter back away, and then I'll bring you right back when I get the other end done, and then I'll show you how to finish this cable up. Okay. All right, next thing I want to do is, now that I got these 2 ends cut, we're going to give it a quick test. I'd stop knocking wire across the place. Okay. So we're going to go back to our ohm scale. Okay. And now all I have to do is just check from lug to lug. Okay, so I go from one lug to another. You can hear it's good. Reading the same voltage. Reads 0.1 ohms. It's not bad. Okay. Given that we're going through 2 connectors and everything else, so we know this is a good cable before we continue working on it. Okay. Next thing we do, we'll cut off a couple 1-inch pieces of this heat shrink. Okay. We're going to need roughly that much. Again, this is 3/4 inch heat shrink. I'll put a link to it in the description. Okay. Okay. Oops. Pull short. The other thing when working with this wire, if you cut any little strands off, you're going to have a whole mess on this cable. I don't know if the camera is going to pick that up, but you can see what happened is I miscut. I put it in the wrong piece on this stripper, and I cut way too many wires. I just cut the end off. Problem is, you cut the end off and you end up with all this stuff. If I had cut it back into the jacket, it would have been just fine. So, all right. So let's just heat shrink this sucker. So the 3/4 fits over these lugs pretty good. So what I want to do is I want to come back to, so you notice I just straightened that lug up a little bit. So I'll come back to the bend there, okay? It's one end done. And if you set it down on stuff, it'll start burning, so you got to be really careful. Could even burn yourself. So let's put this other end on. So there you have it. There's your cable. This is the one that I bought from Amazon, and this is the one that I just made. You can see that other than the difference in color, they use a little bit longer heat shrink, and it's easy to do that. You just cut a little bit longer. But it's pretty much the exact same cable, almost exact same length. See, I got pretty close. In fact, yeah, I'm within a 1/4 inch, which isn't bad. So you got a choice. You can either buy cables like this. Again, you can, they're about, I think $10–15 per pair, or maybe 20, or you can make your own. Again, the thing is that I have a 50-foot spool here of 6 gauge. You're certainly not going to buy that. That's just crazy just to make one cable. But if you're running new trolling motor cables in your boat, this 50-foot spool would be perfect because you're going to run 2. Well, you actually get a 25-foot spool of red and a 25-foot spool of black, and now you got enough to run your full battery leads up to your trolling motor area on the bow. Okay, so there you have it. One thing you're going to need to do is you need the right crimper, you need the right stripper, and that's about it. And you need some heavy-duty cutters. The nice thing about that crimper is the cutters come with it. You also need some arm strength. I just don't have that right now. My shoulder's messed up. My hands are messed up. Hopefully in another couple months I'll have them back. We'll see. And hopefully the shoulder will heal. So, all right. Anyway, thanks for watching. Yeah, I'm all messed up here right now. So we'll see you in the next video. Hopefully it'll be a little bit easier on my body. And we'll see what happens. All right, thank you. Bye.